Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Today we're going to talk about marketing, and I'll probably come up with another word to make the title slightly more interesting because I think it's super important, and I think we're thinking about it not completely in perspective. Why do I say it like that? Well, a lot of us believe we have enemies because our government manufactures them and then tells us that they did. An ISIS, something. And it's always built out of stuff that you don't know. I'm just going to go off for a sentence or two here. They use a country or a set of countries built out of people that speak a language that you don't understand, that literally reads from right to left, not left to right. And then they tell you, see that big void in your brain? That's where your boogeyman lives. And it's so poetic to how we develop fears in the first place, right? Someplace dark is where we have fears. And so this is a dark area, and so they tell you that there's your enemy. But there's another enemy to get back on track. And it's called marketing, advertising, sales. Now, there's going to be a lot of you that have done this, that do this. And some of you are actually going to be selling something really great. And some of you know you're selling something that no one should ever buy. Some of you sell a strategic resource. Everybody needs a house. You sell houses. So this isn't really aimed at just every single person who's engaged in some sort of sales, marketing, or advertising. It really isn't. But there are obviously factions that hide in these groups, that use these groups to sell you bullshit. Season 2, I've been really harping on every once in a while, almost every episode I'll say, do no harm, it's the common law, understand it. So it's embedded in all the episodes, so hopefully you start repeating it, right? Because it's the simplest thing to say, right? Do no harm. Boom, it's just like the whole world becomes fantastic. You don't need to define how to do it. Everybody knows what hurts everybody else, right? Now, most of you have pitched something to one of your friends under the guise of word of mouth. You bought a product, you used the product, it blew your frickin' mind. It really saved time. It had its extreme value. And so you almost were so excited that not only did you want to show people how it worked, you want to spread the word, take credit for how amazing this thing is and how it's helped people's lives. You just really like the fact you found something really cool. And there's something really weird about that. It's really interesting how when man finds something, there is this need to, or this desire to tell the world about it. Look over here, there's apples, and then as the community benefits from your find, you feel amazing because they think you were smart in finding it in the first place. It's very interesting. When we're kids, we always do it with music, right? You found a really awesome track, you want to share it with your friends. But in this particular episode, what I want to expose to you is that marketing isn't just the stuff that happens around you that's annoying. In a lot of cases, it's the enemy. What does marketing do? If a marketing department is able to convince you to buy something you do not need, I'm going to suggest that is theft. That it is intellectual theft. They created a set of images, maybe some sound, maybe some live action footage to sway your opinion, to get you to part with your monetary units and purchase something and bring it into your home. And that's just the first stage of it, right? Put it this way, most places on planet Earth have running water. And it is filtered to a particular degree. And it's not free, but it doesn't cost a tremendous amount of money to run a water faucet and get a drink of water. But there are bottling companies that take that water, put it in a plastic bottle, which has a bunch of plastic in the water all of a sudden, especially if it gets hit by the sun or sits on the shelf too long, and you pay $1.50 for it, $1 for it. But it was about a penny out of the faucet, if even that. That's theft. That's fraud. That's theft and that's fraud. But they won't protect you. Your government, who's supposed to protect you from all things that are going to do you harm, from a private corporation to you, is paid off, if anyone's even looking. It used to be the countries were built out of the people that actually were indigenous to the country. And now all countries that have any power structure whatsoever have been utterly and completely infiltrated by them and their people, except for perhaps Iceland. But here in America, I would say that outside of a few newcomers, this place is completely infiltrated. But there's all kinds of different levels of marketing, right? Tons of them. There's someone trying to get you to buy a food that they tell you it's better than someone else's. Well, it's a relative term, relative perspective. And you part with your money. But now let's go deeper into sort of the more acidic marketing that happens in this world. And it's in the area of pharmaceuticals. Now, there's a couple different types of companies. There's a company that's telling you that they're going after sort of a base defect in man, heart medicine or thinning your blood medicine or whatever, diabetes medication. And in our brain, we think, okay, that's one group of folks that are really trying to cure illness. And then you have another pharmaceutical division that is more your biotech industry, which is trying to give you a lifestyle increase, give you a hard-on 24 hours a day, more hair on your head, fuller lips, your neck goiter shrinks in the middle of the night without having to exercise or change your eating habits. But the marketing divisions of these companies are probably some of the most devious psychological operations you have ever seen in your life. I believe it was in the early 80s. There was a study done where a city in Europe actually had a contagion outbreak of whiplash. Now, as those of you who know what whiplash is should be going, wait a minute, that he just mixed up two words. He's completely wrong. No one can catch whiplash. Whiplash is a shock/traumatic moment to your neck and your vertebrae, typically, or your back vertebrae, that leaves you with some serious issues. It can crush the plates, the cartilage plates between your neck bones. It really could become an issue, right? It could maim you for the rest of your life. There's no way that you can catch it off someone because you have to suffer the blunt force trauma to your body to be diagnosed with it. But indeed, this is what was occurring in a city in Europe. I forget which one. But here's what you got to know. To the marketing division of any hypochondriac-based medical center where people are constantly sick, this was the wettest dream they've ever had in their life. The psychological proof that you could convince someone that they could catch, or that they have, a problem that needs to be cured medically. And then all they have to do is come up with a convincing solution that has some sort of FDA-approved, or at least not going to get you sued, snake oil to get you to believe that you're going to fix yourself. Now, again, on this show, we do support biofeedback techniques of believing yourself into wellness, but most of these people that I'm talking about had no illness in the first place. The whole thing's a psyop. But then they figured out over the course of probably about 30 years from that moment exactly how to design, and this happened way before that. They figured out how to design materials, and there's even there's a couple of great hypochondriac Twilight Zones that do this, to essentially list off a bunch of symptoms that common people have that don't have this advanced illness. And as you check off the list of things that are going wrong in your life, especially medically, you find yourself with these issues in your brain. And just to show you how powerful the brain is, you can absolutely catch anything that you think you have. And that's why if you absorb theories of cancer being in your family, cancer being part of your genetics, heart conditions being part of your family, part of your genetics, the more you pick up a psychosis, the more you put yourself in danger. But I'm here to tell you right now that in most cases, it's all a marketing department telling you what to do. One of the reasons why some of the wellness doctors in the world tell you to turn off the television is because they know the frequency of negativity will reduce tremendously. It'll reduce just in the sense of the news that you get that's always pitting you in a divide, right? But the one thing that's happening in the medical advertising, especially in magazines and all that kind of stuff, is that they are programming you to be suspicious about the normal operation of your body. The thing is that most people don't know about their body. They don't know how we're built inside. And so the issue is, if you feel an anomaly, then and you don't know where your stomach is, where your spleen is, what your spleen does, what your your liver does, your kidneys, all these things. But as you get older, you get more aware that they burp every once in a while. If you eat certain foods, they can feel really bad every once in a while. But instead of being the result of having a weird meal, like it's going to cause a little indigestion, you start to think you have catastrophic organ failure if you watch some of these advertisements. But the thing is that we're just a big bag of frequencies. That's what the mass that holds our body together is, before our spirit is involved. Let's just keep over to the body side. And so a thought is nothing more than a more free-flowing, unrestricted flow of electricity through our bodies. They tell you you are what you eat, and trust me, you are what you eat. But the second side of the fence is you are what you think. If you watch the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, and that is actually the title, with the word bleep where you would probably say fuck, but God forbid society get real for a split second. What they will teach you in that film, using science, okay, with lowercase s, the stuff we can confirm, is something called a neural peptide. And a neural peptide is a peptide that is essentially a stem cell. Neural peptides are designed by neural pathways, or they're designed by neural electrical circuits and grids in your brain, like a little factory. Whatever you think, this is literal. This is literal. Whatever you think a neural peptide will turn into, sort of an indicator to the rest of your body. This is what the brain wants us to do. This is what the brain wants us to do. So, for instance, if you work out, for instance, there's a beautiful cascading effect that you look in the mirror and you think you look great. Where every time you look in the mirror and you look great, a neural peptide constructs itself to be that version of yourself, and it starts to roll uphill. But if you read a bunch of bullshit and look at a bunch of advertising, and believe me, here's the catch to what you might think you're doing. If you're like, hey, I don't pay attention to those pharmaceutical ads, and then I ask you, well, do you keep the TV on? Do you keep it within eyeshot of reading the text? Do you keep it in earshot of your subconscious? Because if you're answering yes, then you're fucked. It's up your ass. It is inside of you. You will ingest it, and they know that. And that's why commercial volumes go up between programs. They're trying to traumatize you into listening, because it's all of a sudden really loud. And then they want to stuff in your brain a bunch of suspicious beliefs, if not confirmed beliefs, based on complete conjecture and bullshit, to make you believe you got a problem. Everyone has a problem, right? And it's bullshit. We are built in perfect balance with nature. We are. Guess what? You can actually die of old age. Super secret. Sorry to spoil your party of dying early of something else. You can actually die of old age. Oh, and you can smoke cigars all the way to the very end, because you don't inhale them and they're made of tobacco. But now let's pull back a little bit further here. So we know we have pharmaceutical and biotech companies essentially teaching you that you need things that you don't need. It's always, the biotech is all about shortcuts. But the pharmaceutical industry is really sort of a symptom company, right? Their whole thing is, well, you are sort of sick. You did have a heart attack. You did crap yourself, whatever it is you do. And, hey, our drugs will help you. There's a few side effects. But how did you get sick in the first place? How did you get sick in the first place? Why is someone having a heart attack at 36? Why is the life expectancy of both males and females in the United States of America dropped nearly 20 years? People die in their 60s now all the time. Some in their 50s. A friend of mine just told me he has lost 5 friends from school in the last month or something, and 2 in the last week. A marketing division is most likely the reason why you got sick in the first place. How do we get sick in this world? How does it happen? Is it a small answer that we can have in this episode? The answer is yes. You either put toxins in your body, or you expose the external part of your body to toxins, usually in the form of radio frequencies or electromagnetic waves, and your body is stuck in the middle, being sort of dismantled from the inside out and being attacked from the outside in. And every time that your body experiences an injury to cellular tissue, your immune system has to identify it, mark it, grab it, and make sure you crap out that bad cell. Literally. And then your body has to have the nutrition to supplant the cell that's gone with a fresh cell. So how do you identify all this stuff? Well, what's the easy thing to do? I would say if there's any health trend in the world, that health trend is probably either benign, which means it does nothing for you and they're simply trying to move product, or it's bad for you. They have re-engineered the science with a capital S, which doesn't... Science with a capital S is science that needs no proof to be considered real. Big Bang theories, dark matter theories, global warming theories. They don't need any facts. As a matter of fact, even if you can find facts that prove them wrong, they don't care. It's an emotion-based society curve. It's sort of the weak-minded all conglomerating together and saying to each other, well, I know it's fake, but don't you want to be in on our group? Our brains don't work really well, so, we don't want to get together and be classified as idiots, so what we've decided to do is get together and classify ourselves as geniuses. Are you in or are you out? And the social justice warriors go, I'm in, girl. Who's going to bring me water and food? We haven't figured that out yet. We're all lazy and weak-minded. But now it's interesting that when someone has something to sell that is bad for you, a marketing department never asks that question. Ever, ever, ever. Isn't that weird? How many people have you known that celebrities or your friends that have sold you a product, recommended a product, and they say to you, well, I would never ever put my name on this thing unless I knew it was great. And that's how you get the best lawnmower in your life, maybe a piece of exercise equipment from Chuck Norris. Well, what's a real corporate marketing department do? Well, they got everyone strung out on the very fear that if they don't sell product, they're fired. Wow. That right there cuts right to the chase. The time that you will see in life that people bend the rules of their ethics and hurt and harm other folks is when they're broke. I grew up around car dealerships. Either my father was going to one or working at one. And I watched this happen 100 times. If everyone's sales numbers were great and they had sold 30 cars in a month or something like that, man, they wouldn't scam anybody. They just sat back and said, oh man, I can just shit out sales, no problem. But the second they had a 8-car month and they're not going to make their numbers, not only are they not going to make the numbers that they want, but they're not going to potentially keep their job because the dealership's going to fire them. That's when you see every scummy trick played. You buy a car that has Michelin tires on it, and they go, oh, we're going to clean up the car in the back. So you drive away with the fresh car. The thing is fucking perfectly fresh, but the tires have changed. Financing is, $40 paint protection coating is sold to you for $800 to $1,000. It's just printing money. It's where they steal from you. And they only do it typically when they're desperate. And once they get used to the cash flow of the criminality associated with money, they keep doing it and doing it and doing it. That's why once a car repair place goes bad, it usually stays bad. Once a dealership goes bad, it stays bad. And once a marketing department crosses the line where ethics and morals have nothing to do with anything, then anything's possible. I could probably create an entire episode on this next idea, as it just occurred to me, but guilty by proxy. Imagine that idea. You are committing a crime against man. You know better. You've been educated by your family better. You have morals that you just developed yourself. That as soon as you leave work, you engage those morals. But when you go to work, you're willing to take a paycheck to set it all aside. Well, I'm going to suggest that lots of marketing departments are built out of this idea. But let me give you a couple little things to think about when you think about where the bad marketing is. When pharmaceuticals that we just covered, they're going to give you a list of conditions of what I would call faux indications. The terminology in pharmaceuticals is that when a drug shows that it has the ability to do something to you, they call that an indication. And when you're developing a drug, the big question from the top chemist down is it showing an indication yet? The second an indication occurs, the pharmaceutical company is supposed to patent what they have, and then there's a clock ticking on them, which I believe now is 27 years. When I was in the industry, it was 17 years. And there you go. But they need to give you a commercial full of a bunch of probably 50%, I would say, roughly, right? 50% of the things they're going to say, well, if you feel this and you feel that, then you may have this condition, therefore need our $1 to $10 a dose drug. And 50% are to be unassociated really with the condition, but common things that man might feel. Do you feel tired? Do you ever feel tired? You'll see that one a lot. Do you have fatigue? Well, yeah, every day. Every day that I stay up really late and work really hard, I get fatigued. Doesn't mean I have, anal tropus or whatever they're going to try to sell me for. But now the other 50% are more rooted towards the indication themselves, the condition that you might have. Sorry, I shouldn't say indication, but the condition you have, the symptoms you have. They don't care if you're taking a drug that doesn't have anything to do with your condition, just as long as they can convince you to take the drug. They make their money and they walk away. They do not care. It is up to you to diagnose yourself in a court of law, either by you make your own decision or you allow an MD to make the decision on your behalf. Once you're addicted, once you're subscribed, once you have a prescription, you're good. Let's take the food supply. Well, we know sugar is an inflammatory, not good for you to ever consume in a pure form. All right, so if you eat it, it makes all of your organs swell. It also has a significant impact on your neurology. Tiny people should not eat a lot of sugar if they have panic attacks, because it's just translating into neural energy and you got nothing to spend it on, so you overanalyze living shit out of life and you freak out all over your friends and family. Genetically modified food. Well, it gives lab rats massive, massive tumors when all they do is eat corn. All they eat is GMO corn, and they die of tumors almost as big as their body. Imagine that. I got a tumor off to the left of my body that it looks like I have a different person sitting next to me. That's what happens to the rats who eat GMO food. But I think about it. How much pure sugar products do we see advertised on TV? Well, what is a soda? A soda is sugar water. So it's got a different flavor, a little caramel, different levels of carbonation. All these energy drinks, they have, the other one's aspartame, right? No one advertises aspartame. It is a hidden killer that is in all things that are sugarless, and no one talks about its existence. GMOs. It's in almost everything that's not marked organic, and it kills you. It sterilizes you. It screws you up. And it's been in our food supply since 1993. Wow. Right? Wow. When someone sells a pharmaceutical product, they have to have the big disclaimer at the end, right? Everything that could go wrong with you as a result of ingesting this drug. And of course, we know that those symptoms, that those side effects are almost always entirely something we would never risk in our life. But somehow they make billions and trillions of dollars a year. That's why the pharmaceutical companies love vaccinations and the whole business model of vaccinations. One, they can lobby for states to make them mandatory for children and adults, so they just sell no matter what. Once it's made mandatory, no lawsuit can be held against the pharmaceutical company for killing you, because you have to sue your state. I mean, it's just, these fuckers are absolutely masterful. But where's the disclaimer for GMOs? Where's the acknowledgement that rats die when they eat GMO corn? Where is the disclaimer on aspartame? That it turns into formaldehol and essentially rubbing alcohol, methyl ester, inside your body. And a lot of that just stores in your brain cavity, screwing up your brain. Where are the warnings that some people have grand mal seizures as a result of eating too much aspartame? So a long time ago, I had a buddy who programmed next to me in about 2004, and he would drink diet Coke, lime, 6-pack a day, and he would, throughout the day, have a seizure and bite his tongue. 2 times he bit his tongue so hard through having a seizure that he had to go to the hospital to get stitches on his tongue. And it was making him so frustrated, he didn't realize it was the aspartame. I didn't learn until later. That's what that is. What happens when you buy a pack of cigarettes? The 98%, well, I should say, that's actually not true. It's at least 80% paper, probably 18% fiberglass foam, which is your filter, and the other 2% is tobacco, plus 1,500 chemicals to make you super addicted and super sick. And you inhale it, right? You inhale it, and it sticks to your lungs, and it makes you sick. If you're in a room with someone who smokes a cigarette, everyone in the room feels it sticking to their lungs. It's way different. If I smoked a cigar in the room with you, you'll smell it, but your lungs won't feel sticky because it's tobacco. The only paper on this cigar is the band that you pull off when you smoke down to it. The rest of it's all fermented tobacco leaves. And you don't inhale. I'm not sucking fiberglass into my throat, right? Shredding my entire esophagus and lung canals and lung sacs, and then coating it with a tarish tobacco that's got, paper soot, and a little bit of tobacco with these chemicals killing me. The cigars have to have the same exact warning that cigarettes have, when they're 2 totally different things. And just to further the analogy one more time, if this was a orange, and this was a glass of orange juice, if that's what a cigar is, a cigarette is a Monster Cola with 2% juice in it from an orange. That is literally the difference between a cigarette and a cigar. Except I would imagine that drinking orange juice is way better for you than smoking a cigar. So what do we do about all this marketing? It's coming at us 24 hours a day. And it comes at us in the most subtle ways. Now, if I said, sure, there's things called ads and commercials. And you're like, yeah, genius, I know. But now what if you watch Fox News? CNN, NBC, maybe the NFL, the NBA, all these different things. Well, you know that nowadays when you watch the news, there's always a logo somewhere on the screen, creating brand alliance, brand allegiance, brand loyalty. For some social justice warriors, Tim Cook is like Christopher Reeves in Superman. Unbelievable. Now, for an organization that you believe that does no harm, well, maybe that's a good thing. Don't we want to celebrate organizations that are good to us? I'd say, yeah, sure. But what organization meets those requirements? It's a tough one today. It's a tough one to find one that doesn't have something up its sleeve, right? But now, if you were in a crowd of people, and they're all sort of like a pit of a rock concert of some sort, or musical concert, and you're just surrounded by folks, and they're all kind of chatting, and they're all moving around, but they're just shoulder to shoulder. And someone told you, okay, right now, while you're in the middle of that crowd, I want you to find someone with integrity. Find someone that doesn't tell lies. And you start trying to have a conversation, but there's a lot of crosstalk, and you're just like, oh my God, all right. This isn't really the best forum to do this. If you're smart, you'd say, well, can I get a room by myself? And then we could pull one person out of the crowd, sit them down, and I could have a conversation with them on a sofa so I can figure out if they're telling the truth or not. And I don't want to hear any cross chatter from someone else. I really need to concentrate on what I'm saying here. That'd probably be your best solution. So how do you apply that sort of idea to the world of marketing? Well, I think the first step you got to do is turn off the TV, turn off the radio. I don't mean to offend anyone, but I tell you what, if I get in your car and you turn on the ignition and the radio goes on, I automatically think you're asleep. Automatically. If you can stomach listening to the radio, there's a special level of ostrich head poking in the sand that you have. Because the amount of advertising versus music, for one, is about 50-50 nowadays. And it's just fucking swill. I mean, it is the worst shit you could possibly ever hear constantly. Some guy's selling you a mattress. Some guy's selling you something. I mean, it's just the worst of the worst. Television being the second worst, right? Now, full disclosure, season 2, I used a musical soundtrack that wouldn't infringe on anyone's copyright, so that I could turn on banner ads on the desktop, just to see what that would do. I think I've made $26 throughout the whole thing. It's a very slow crawl. Part of it's just an experiment, but I won't turn on pre-roll ads. All I can say is, if you accidentally click the banner, then you're just saying, here, have 2 cents. But the amazing thing happens when you turn off your television and your radio. DJ your own stuff. Bring a little iPod in there, hook it up to your cell phone, whatever, and just push your own music into the thing. If you have Amazon Prime, they have playlists that are phenomenal with no advertising. It's the music you love. Just someone else DJs it. It's really phenomenal. It's really phenomenal how good these soundtracks are. And you find new music, too. It's really cool. Television. Well, we all have Netflix now. You just dial up Netflix. You push on the program that you want. HBO Go is pretty amazing as well. If there's a show on TV that's on television that you really like, well, I don't know. One, you'd be hell-bent to try to convince me that there's anything good on normal network cable. It seems that everything that's amazing is in some sort of Netflix or HBO type solution, right? Cinemax or something. And believe me, it's probably 95% crap, but that 5% is pretty amazing. Latest series I'm ingesting is called Westworld, which is a television series version of Michael Crichton's movie/book. It has been masterfully recreated by HBO and the J.J. Abrams group. Jonathan Nolan, I believe, is the lead man there. But you have to quiet the chatter of marketing. You have to. And you won't realize how absolutely overwhelming that chatter is until you completely turn it off. And then you sort of just get peace. Have you ever been in a really loud room, a loud venue, and hopefully not like a concert venue that's going to leave you with ringing ears for 2 days, but just a loud gathering. And you get to a room, you get into your car, and all the chatter's gone. As much as you might have enjoyed the chatter, there's a peace and there's a calm that comes over you once the neurons in your brain don't have to process 5 senses on a 24-hour basis. I'm going to tell you that if you really want to control your life, you need to make sure that for the majority of your life, you're in control. And that means not letting yourself get swept away by someone else's words. That you don't find yourself emotionally falling into something. For those of you who remember Ren and Stimpy, and I mentioned this once before in season 1, I think. The very first episode of Ren and Stimpy absolutely nailed marketing on a level that it was just the funniest thing I'd ever seen. It was the reason why I got addicted to the series for a little while. But Stimpy, who's the cat character, he was watching a commercial on television, and he sits down in front of this television. The whole thing's kind of set in this bizarre beatnik era. And the guy's voice is getting like this, getting like this, getting like this, and he goes, oh, ta-da! And Stimpy's body kept compressing as he was just, his eyeballs are getting bigger and his body's compressing as he's totally buying into the marketing that was being pushed at him, the tone of voice impact that was being pushed on him. And then when the guy hit the crescendo of his pitch, Stimpy's head explodes like a volcano, and a big funnel of energy comes out of his head. Probably lava, like a volcano. And when you see that, you are seeing exactly what the marketing department is trying to do to you, is build up a beginning, middle, and end with a crescendo towards buying the product. And Marshall McLuhan, the philosopher, had a theory about marketing that I want to share with you. He said that the reason why news in the 60s got really negative, and I mean, embedding reporters in troops in Vietnam and showing you horrific footage of napalm and, little girls running down the street having been burned up, was that the the companies that bought marketing advertisements in between all the news breaks, what they wanted, the psychological formula they found that worked, was that if the news agency can make you feel like you hate life, isn't life shit, that once the advertisement comes on, you feel, if I buy that product, I won't have such a shitty life, will I? No, you buy this fucking can of soup or that mop or that better than best toothpaste, you'll be great. That is why, and that is how, and that is when the news got really, really dark. Really, really dark. Was it George and Gracie? Is that the show George Burns used to have back in the 30s and 40s? They used to embed advertisement directly into the episode, which actually I preferred. What they would do is they just had this little house together, and they'd run all kinds of skits through it, situational comedy stuff. And by the way, if any of you women want to buy into the feminist movement, that women were all repressed and that kind of stuff, go see George and Gracie and tell me how weak she was. Go watch The Honeymooners and tell me how weak the wives were. Hell, watch I Love Lucy and tell me how weak the women were. I mean, Lucy would apologize sometimes and act a little coy, but Desi and all the men were constantly apologizing for being men and being stupid, But anyway, during George and Gracie, they would stop the show, and she would essentially make dinner for the fictitious family, and the whole thing was that she might use Campbell's soup. And so she'd stop and do an advertisement for Campbell's soup right there as part of the show. It was really cool. It was a much better formula, right? Now, obviously fresh food's the best food. Processed food is super ionized food that will screw with your alkaline nature of your body. There are errors in history where we don't know we're harming ourselves sometimes, right? So I kind of cut those old shows a little bit of slack. I'm pretty sure that cigarettes back, 80 years ago were actually made of tobacco with a tobacco on the inside, paper on the outside, and didn't have filters. So you were smoking real tobacco cigarettes and not what's made today, right? But how else are things advertised? I mean, there's a billion ways things are advertised. You guys are going to be shouting at this video because I'm going to miss the one you're thinking of. But they create fictitious environments. Environments where the world is perfect, which I have nothing against. I mean, I think that, Leave It to Beaver, The Brady Bunch, are actually pretty healthy shows for society on one level because it showed a balanced family going through little trauma-based situations that they had to resolve. Usually it's always something happens at the beginning of the episode, it's hidden until the last 5 minutes of the episode, and then it's revealed. That's a sitcom almost in every case. But it gives us a target to shoot for, sort of thing. But while these fictitious environments are going, and I believe if you watch Brady Bunch, you won't see any of this. You watch Leave It to Beaver, you won't see any of this. Watch The Twilight Zone, you won't see any of this. But today what happens? If it's a new show with a fictitious family, they're going to be dumping Tide into a washing machine, using an Apple computer, pouring Cheerios into a bowl. The entire episode is a big sponsorship thing. I just watched the old Poltergeist, 1982, last night, but I also turned on closed caption, because one thing I'm finding, a little segue here, let me a little diversion here, I'm finding out that I didn't know what people were saying my whole life. When people mumble real fast or say something weird, using words you don't know because they're using bigger words than you know how to speak, you get so much more out of the movie when you watch the words printed on the screen. It's fascinating. But that movie, which is an utter masterpiece, if there ever was one, tons and tons and tons of marketing in that thing. From the board games that the kids were playing, plenty of Star Wars content, all of the Tide, Fantastic, Palmolive products. It's all marketing, right? But the idea there, the psyop in that marketing is you want to live in that fictitious world. And so if you buy those products, you sort of have done a cosplay in your own house to creating that fictitious planet in your house, right? I mean, think about this. Just think about this for a second. If I could make a product that for $1,000 or $5,000, you could totally retrofit the inside of your house to match your favorite video game, from Zelda to Fallout 4 to Star Wars the movie, Star Trek. You could just put this stuff all over. Somehow I magically figured out how to turn a window into a Star Trek viewport. You know, I would be a multi-billionaire in a week. Because people want to escape. They want to live in the fantasies because they won't take the time to engineer this world. Now, Woody Harrelson, who some people think is a tool, I think he's a real man. I think he's seen a lot more than most of us. I think his family, if you know about his uncle, he's probably seen a lot more than most of us see. But I just watched a little video talking about the fact he made a 2-minute video, and I don't know when he did this, but he essentially gave a sort of non-politically biased presentation about how we do consume products that we don't need that are bad for us, and reminded us in this video that if you don't buy the product, the company will change. I know that sounds so crazy, but we're always talking about the silent protest, the non-compliance techniques of changing the world. Well, I guarantee you advertising departments around the world are shitting bricks right now because television is becoming the thing that's not watched anymore. And the internet has plenty of options that are free and better than anything that they can put out through a network cable programming thing, because there's so many censors trying to tell the writers how they can write a story. You know, again, Hollywood and television has all been replaced by people without film degrees, without writing degrees. They have no idea what a good story is if it bit them on the face. Those folks seem to have been hired by the private networks like Netflix, HBO, and all the subsidiaries like them. And that's why you get unbelievable series out of these folks with no advertising. The most advertising you get on HBO is just you push play on Poltergeist, and it tells you that on Halloween this year, they're going to release the remake of Poltergeist. Or it's actually October 29th, I think, 2016. There's the famous movie from the 70s, and for some reason my mind's got two names for that. I think it's called Network, but it'd be called, for some reason the word broadcast news is, I don't think that's it, but I think it's called Network. But it's about a guy that is 30 years into television news, and he basically gets fed up. It's the famous movie where the guy says, you know, we're fed up with this and we're not going to take it anymore. And what's wild about this movie is that he tells you right to your face in this film, as played by a couple other characters, exactly the cabal of television. It tells you about the corporate, you know, duopolies and monopolies and oligarchy families that control the world. It's made in like 76 or something. And the more this guy rebels, the more the people want to watch, and he keeps getting more and more viewers. But the ironic twist is that he says, you need to stop watching me as a result of watching me. Learn what you need to learn and then go away. Don't let this crap into your head anymore. He tells you that the network he's on is full of shit. And it's interesting, right? So the best thing you could ever do with marketing is turn it off. Don't ingest it. Don't buy it. Do not be responsible for giving your money into something that isn't good for you. That doesn't mean that every single product is bad. Perhaps what you do is make it a game. If it's a product that you believe in, that you don't believe has any, ties to something else, and you probably should look up the company that you feel loyal, and then space and scandal, or maybe conspiracy is probably not a good one though. But you'll find out a lot about the companies that you think are fantastic, that you've been loyal to your whole life, and you'll realize, oh my God, I had no idea. So people buy bottled water by the case. And if they were to have to mark all the bottled waters of the world with the label, this is just tap water, you would change brands or stop buying it, or get a water filter and get it for damn near free. It was a Bayer aspirin. Bayer aspirin was responsible for contaminating some drug that they made and shipping it to South Africa but the contamination was AIDS. Somehow, a living strand of AIDS. A bunch of people got AIDS from Bayer Aspirin Company. Are you going to take it anymore? Now, we're all violators of this because it's really, really tough to survive and say, oh, I'm never going to eat a McDonald's hamburger. I'm never going to do this or that. Well, you'll slip into it with you when you don't know it. You're going to be hungry, and the only place you can find food at 2 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning is a 7-Eleven. And it might be really tough to find a company that has any ethics or morals or nutrition to sell your product. But you got to put something in your belly so when you go to the meeting, you're not starving to death and therefore preoccupied. I never go to a meeting hungry. And I especially never go to a lunch meeting hungry. That might sound counterintuitive. Well, you're going to eat, dude. Why the hell would you eat? Because I don't want to have to eat. Because if I'm at a meeting, then my brain has to be churning really, really well. I can't be thinking about, because a lot of times at lunch meetings or dinner meetings, what ends up happening is the individual you're with is also not hungry because they're smart. And they'll have drinks for a little while or some shitty hors d'oeuvre or appetizer you don't want. I'm not a picky eater, but that is, you want to be in total control. And then you don't have to order the 20-ounce steak because you're not that hungry. And it shows a little bit of reserve on your side of the fence. It's good for you, trust me. Now, I'm very, very fortunate to live in Southern California. By the way, when it's a windy day, my hair tickles my face. So if I touch on my face a lot, it's not because I have ticks. It's just because my freaking hair keeps... You can't see it on camera half the time because of the filter. I have like a hair going up my nostril. Information you knew you wanted. But I have a lot of healthy grocery stores here. We have a chain here called Mother's Market. It's phenomenal. I can walk in there and get brands, that are 5 years old or maybe 20 years old, but they're made by a family in, Wyoming or something that believes in all things should be natural. They refuse to put anything in their products that are GMO, that are bad for you. They research all the ingredients to all products to make sure that it all works together. I have an organic pill that promotes focus. It's phenomenal. I take a couple of these things and holy shit, does my brain just completely focus. I believe it's called focus. I have herbs from a Chinese guy that promotes, energy, a ginseng combination, right? So if you want to replace everything in your house with good things, it can actually be a lot of fun. Now, if you're hurting financially, I understand that you're going to have to probably postpone. But I tell you what, part of what Tony Robbins always tells you is that you need to map the negativity to things that are really negative. And if the exercise is nothing more than you saying, well, when I get money, I'm going to focus on these products changing in my life. For some of you that are aware of slave labor in this world, you realize that there's a ton of products that we purchase that are built with slave labor. And it's extremely difficult to figure out which ones are and which ones aren't. When I was a kid, everything was made in Japan. That was the big invasion from Asia, was that all of our toys are made in Japan. Now, if something's made in Japan, it's made by either robots or people that get paid a decent living wage. If it's made in China, chances are some kid's getting like $1.50 a day and lives on the plantation that is the corporation itself, and they take 90 cents out of the $100.50, and the rest goes into some crappy bank account that the country decides how much you can take out at any one point in time. I used to employ a guy who in Taiwan, and he had coders in Hong Kong and mainland China. And he always tried to hire the coders in Hong Kong because they had complete control of their bank accounts. But when he hired mainland China people, he goes, the big problem is that if we deposit $500 in their bank account, and that's all they have in the bank, oftentimes they go try to withdraw that or put a payment against it, the government will block you from using all of your money. And it's not them trying to get you a savings account. It's to make sure that the capital that the country can claim on their books remains at a significant level and it grows. Now, a lot of these are very surgical situations, so you can find people that go deny that completely because at that particular time of day, they don't have that problem. It just happens, right? But you might extend your choices into the humanitarian side of things as well. You may choose, if you can, to stop purchasing products that are made by slave labor. That means anything made in Mexico, India, or China, for sure. For sure. Now, if you live in those countries, you should purchase the hell out of anything made in your country, just as a matter of principle. You should. It keeps the money in the walls of your country. If your little town makes things, try to buy things from folks in your town, because it keeps the money inside the ecosystem of your town. That's why Walmart is the worst thing that could ever happen to a small town, because they don't have a lot of money, and when you buy a product from Walmart, the product manufacturing money goes to China or India or Mexico, and the profit margin goes to Europe. It's no longer kept in America. And the only real asset that the original Walton family has are their stock options. It's all theoretical money. They don't really have the cash. They spend a fraction of what their value is. But let me give you the final verdict of why I do what I do when it comes to marketing. There's really two layers to it. It's all within the self-envelope if I put God inside the self-envelope. I want to be what I think. I want to be the product of my decisions, because I feel like it's just a constant of the universe anyway. Regardless of my desires, that's what I'm built out of. I am trying to construct myself out of decisions that I make for myself personally, with as much dimension as possible. I'm actually choosing these things for my life. And when I break the rules, I do it very strategically. I am at the 7-Eleven and I buy a crappy thing that perhaps is made in the United States, but it's not good for me. But I know how much I put in my system. There's some things I will never put in my system. I will never drink aspartame. I would rather drink the sugar and work it off somehow, or curb my eating, before I put that other toxic shit in my brain to sit inside my mind, right? I'm going to tell you that the reason why I'm capable of doing this show is, yes, I have a life that has gathered all this information and thought about it, sure. But the one thing that allows me to think clearly for an hour plus is no fluoride in my brain anymore. I'm out of that stuff for over 10 years. No aspartame in my body for 10 plus years. All right? GMOs, I'm sure I get a ton of them, honestly. I can't check every single restaurant. I could be eating at the Bel Air Country Club, and I don't know if it's non-GMO or not. I don't know. I don't know if the members of that club make sure that that's not the case. Water. Well, I try to drink smart water. I've studied smart water and its reverse osmosis technique of being created. I've called them up actually on the telephone and asked them, do you add any fluoride at post processing? And they said absolutely not. And so I am trusting that water to be a double entendre of smart water being smart for my brain, and that it doesn't pollute me. I think it's funny that Steve Jobs drank smart water almost exclusively on stage. But that's how I got my brain at a higher level. And once I got it to a higher level, I realized I had way too much processor power for the average everyday thought. And so this show is almost medication for me to say, okay, we're thinking big thoughts, so let's record them so I don't have to feel like I have to say it over and over and over again. Today, if one of my friends really pushes me on a subject matter, I might regurgitate and plagiarize my episode, but if it really gets to a point where they're asking me questions, data mining my brain, I'll just go, watch my show, man. Watch my show. But the other big one is this, and I probably more than 51% of you can feel this one. For anyone who's an atheist, you could probably exit the episode at this point. But I believe in a centralized consciousness. I do. I don't believe any man-made stories about it, unless they're very ethereal. And I will say that the Poltergeist movie did this beautiful job. And I hadn't seen this movie as an adult for a really, really long time. But when the little lady, the fact is, there's two moments of dialogue from the two paranormal investigators. One is the older woman, the taller older woman with red hair. She talks to the little boy and the mother, and kind of just talks about how the spirits cross over to the other side. And it was totally non-biblical, except she did use the word heaven at one point. But the shorter woman who clears the house at first, she gives more dissertation about how that works. And I have to say, whoever wrote that dialogue was really plugged into the universe and really calling to my instincts as well. But now, let's go back to our point so we can close the show out. At some point, all of your actions and all of your thoughts and all of your deeds, I believe, will be checksummed by God, a centralized consciousness of some sort. I do believe that creator/being will not be into punishment. I don't think there's any punishment on the other side. But I believe that sitting in the greatness, you're gonna have a couple thoughts. One, there's going to be things that you didn't know were bad, and you fell right into it. And at that point, you will feel very little guilt. At most, you might feel a little frustration that you didn't spend your time more wisely to investigate things. But if you're watching this show, you're not one of those people. You just aren't. But the one that's really kind of our issue is, there's the difference between ignorance and stupidity. We talk about this every once in a while, right? Ignorance is you absolutely had no idea. And that's really what the previous, the former explanation there about kind of sitting in front of God and going, I totally didn't know that. Oh my gosh, I thought there was a left and right party. But stupidity is a tough one. We don't want to be at the end of our life crossing over packed full of stupidity, which means that you were taught what you needed to know, but you ignored it. You ignored the message from the universe that something was bad, and you just walked past it. It's a very tough thing to do, the way the world is engineered today, which is why it's imperative that we re-engineer the world. Slave labor, for instance. What was it? The Clinton administration signed some status. I think China got into the UN during the Clinton administration, the first one, and they put China on the preferred trade status and said that their egregious actions towards their people of paying them nothing, making them work 16-hour days, having to sleep at their desks to make iPhones and all that kind of stuff. Of course, that wasn't the case in the 90s, but there were other factories, and it was even worse, right? Foxconn getting busted over and over and over by humanitarian groups is the best thing that could ever happen to those people. Because every single notch up that a corporation in China has to increase the quality of living because the world is watching, it spreads like a virus to all the minds in China. And believe me, they want a world that's just like ours too. Why the hell do you think they move here? Because it's an instantaneous grab of their civil rights, right? I do not believe we've been created to be controlled by others. And that's something I think you should think about. You were not created on this planet to be controlled by others. At any point in time was that God's design for the universe. Look at the birds, look at the fish, look at all wild animals. Is anybody controlling them? No. They completely live in a sovereign free world, as long as we don't cut down their environments and pollute their food supplies. That's why a part of me has a bit of a problem with domesticated animals. What they really need is freedom. Now, we've created all these animals by hybriding things together that could never survive in the wild. And boy, did we ever take on the God responsibility there, right? But let's end our lives with a very intended existence. And if you stand in front of your Creator and you say, or even the rest of the universe, perhaps it's just a bunch of individuals looking at you, that'd even be more creepy, right? And you violated some of these codes of man. You caused suffering in someone else. And of course, the way the world's constructed today, we do. We do inadvertently contribute to the demise of man. We just do. Products are made by slave labor all over the planet. That's why I like presidential candidates that say, we're going to end that by ceasing to purchase them at competitive rates. But we want to stand in front of the Creator and we want to basically say we did our best and really, really know that second to second, minute to minute, based on the strife that you were facing at any one point in your life, with what you could spare, you applied yourself. But turn off your TV, turn off your radio. Those two things are huge. If you're going to a website that's trying to push a minute and a half advertisement to you, like CNN or Fox, before you can watch their little shitty, mass media news article, Just shut the browser off. I'll tell you what, YouTube is amazing. If you have a news piece that's really important to you, somebody said something, whether it's gossip or real news, just go to YouTube, type the exact words of the other article into YouTube, and someone has reposted it. Someone has got the original footage, and you can see it without advertising, or at least without nosebleed advertising, right? I think you feel me. I just want to heighten this as an enemy. Marketing is your enemy. It really is. It doesn't mean every single thing that comes through is a bad product. It just means you need to pay attention, because I think the overwhelming majority is bad products, stuff you don't need, promises you don't need, methods of trying to make you a hypochondriac, so you take chemicals into your body and change your physiology to really be sick with all those crazy side effects. If you're currently taking a prescription from a big pharma for anything on planet Earth, whether it be the cure to cancer or some treatment for something, do me a favor. Search on the internet for the organic version of that solution, and just realize that no one can really patent an organic solution. I'm always telling you, the vitamins you need to take in this world, because we're always depleted of them, is the time-release powdered vitamin C by Solera, a zinc copper powder capsule, take them together, by Solera. There's a company called Apricot Power that sells B17 pills. You can get apricot pits that look like almonds and just chew them up, 3 a day. That's it. It's bitter, it's weird, so you can get the pill if you want. But there are organic solutions for virtually everything in the world that will keep you from getting ill. But if you do get ill because you're ingesting all this crap that marketing departments say that you should, they've got solutions. And trust me, it's better than everything that you could get from a pharmaceutical company. Because all the pharmaceutical companies do every single day is they find the herb that will do it to you naturally with no side effects, because it's in balance with nature, and they synthesize it. They break it down and reconstitute it and rebuild it from scratch, because that is the only thing they can patent in a patent office, is something that's synthesized. That's why people die. Take it from a guy who helped make a product to create drugs before I was awake. If you dig the episode, please like it. If you like the series, please subscribe. No, it's a variety show. It's not all about self-help and all this kind of stuff. Lots of topics in here. Enough said. DeepThoughtsRadio.com, MKUltraRadio.com. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.